Hey man, let's just call it like it is. Today's dating culture is so warped that the very thing that used to build intimacy, communication, is now treated like a sign of desperation. You send her a good morning text too many days in a row, you're needy. You try to have an actual conversation about her day instead of replying with one-word emojis, you're too available. The bar is so low now that effort is no longer seen as interest, it's seen as weakness. Because to her, if you're communicating without chaos, if you're consistent without being mysterious, if you're present without her having to beg for your attention, then you must be a man who has no options. And that in her mind means you're not worth wanting. You know what's wild? A woman could spend all day scrolling through her phone, hoping that some guy she barely knows gives her a little hit of validation. But the second the man she's dating actually tries to talk to her like a mature adult, she recoils. Because communication for her is no longer about connection. It's a test, a tool, a trap. It's a subtle way to measure your scarcity or abundance. She's not looking at what you're saying, she's looking at why you're saying it. Is he checking in because he's worried I'll leave? She wonders. Is he texting just to keep me interested? Is he chasing me because he has nothing better to do? And suddenly, you just trying to hold a normal conversation are labeled as desperate, clingy, or trying too hard. That's the insanity of modern dating. Effort has become unattractive, especially if it's predictable. She doesn't want consistent communication. She wants unpredictable chaos that keeps her guessing. She wants to wonder what you're thinking, not have you tell her. She wants to feel butterflies, not stability. And here's the brutal truth. Many women equate uncertainty with emotional value. If she knows you're there, then the thrill is gone. But if she doesn't know where she stands with you, now you've triggered her obsession. Now you've awakened her desire. Because the more you pull back, the more her ego feels the need to prove itself, not to love you, but to win you. So when you're calling her to check in, when you're messaging just to talk about your day, when you're showing up consistently thinking you're doing the right thing, you're unknowingly failing the test. Because the more available you are, the more she starts to see you as predictable. And once she sees you as predictable, she assumes you're not wanted by other women. And once she assumes that, the game is over. You're no longer the prize, you're the guy who's trying too hard. And here's the messed up part. You could be an incredible man, successful, loyal, ambitious, but if your communication doesn't carry mystery, it doesn't matter. That's why some of the most toxic men are swimming in female attention. Not because they're better men, but because they're better at being unavailable. They don't text back right away. They don't explain themselves. They don't show up emotionally unless it benefits them. And women, addicted to the chaos of modern relationships, eat it up. Because if it feels too easy, if it feels too normal, they assume something's missing. And this is why you, being the kind, consistent, communicative man that you are, keep getting ghosted or pushed away, while the guy who sends one dry text a day gets worshipped like a god. So what happens? You, being genuine, start to doubt yourself. You begin questioning whether you're too open, too communicative, too real. You start editing your text, timing your responses, crafting your messages like a politician instead of a man. And just like that, you're no longer communicating with clarity. You're performing. You're tiptoeing around her ego, her attention span, and her emotional volatility. Not because you're weak, but because you've been taught, through pain, that honesty makes you look needy. And that's how women condition men to hide their truth. You learn to speak less, feel less, and show less, just to keep her attention. This is where the cycle of emotional suppression begins. You stop expressing yourself, you stop reaching out, you stop asking deep questions, not because you don't want connection, but because you've been trained like a dog to associate communication with rejection. You've been punished for being available, and over time, that messes with your psyche. You start thinking that love only exists where there's distance. You start believing that if you're kind and consistent, you'll get discarded. So what do? You become the very thing you once hated, the nonchalant, detached man who only speaks when spoken to. And that's how emotional intimacy dies, one ignored text at a time. And here's the paradox. The less you communicate, the more value she assigns to your presence. The more distant you are, the more she chases. The more mysterious you remain, the more obsessed she becomes. And it makes you wonder, is this what love has become? A game of silence and shadows? A dance of mixed signals and unanswered messages? If so, then no wonder so many men are checking out of the dating scene, not because they're bitter, but because they're tired of playing a rigged game. A game where being real gets you ghosted and being indifferent gets you adored. But here's what separates the men who win from the men who chase. The winners don't adjust who they are to please unstable women. They don't stop communicating. They simply stop communicating with women who punish honesty. They understand that clarity is not desperation, that expressing yourself is not weakness, that asking how was your day is not a red flag. And if a woman sees it as one, then she's not ready for a relationship. She's still addicted to drama. And brother, you weren't made to be a supporting actor in someone's personal soap opera. You were built to lead, to speak, to command, not to beg for attention like a boy. So you have a choice. You can keep walking on eggshells, muting your voice to maintain her attention, or you can embrace your masculine edge, speak when you damn well please, and let her decide if she can handle a man who doesn't play games. And if she can't, let her go. Because the right woman won't punish you for being expressive. She'll reward you with loyalty, depth, and presence. She won't make you feel like talking is a crime. She'll make your truth feel safe. And until you meet her, protect your peace. Save your words for someone who listens, not someone who keeps score. Now here's the part that really stings. Most men don't even realize this dynamic until it's too late. You go into dating thinking honesty is the glue that keeps things together. You think checking in, sharing your thoughts, and being emotionally open will strengthen the bond. But instead, you're treated like you're chasing, and every time she pulls away, every time she responds colder, every time your effort is met with indifference, you begin internalizing it as I'm doing too much. But what if you're not doing too much? What if she's just addicted to being underwhelmed by men? What if her bar is so low that actual communication feels suspicious? You see, in a world filled with emotionally unavailable men, a guy who actually communicates feels like a threat. Because when you speak openly, she's forced to confront her own emptiness. When you reach out consistently, she can't hide behind her "I'm busy" excuse. When you ask her meaningful questions, she can't deflect with surface-level games. Your communication exposes her unreadiness. And rather than rise to your level, she labels you as too much. That's how fragile modern connection has become. Realness is rejected because it requires her to step into vulnerability, and she'd rather run than rise. And here's another twist. Women still crave communication, but they don't want it from the men who offer it. They want it from the men who withhold it. That's why the guy who leaves her on read for 6 hours has her glued to her phone. That's why the man who replies with "lol" after she pours her heart out keeps her obsessed. Because she's not addicted to affection, she's addicted to earning it. And if you give it freely, she devalues it. But if she has to work for it, suddenly it means something. That's the mind game at play. And if you don't understand it, you'll keep giving love the right way to the wrong woman. So what's the solution? It's not to go silent. It's not to play games. It's to observe. Watch how she reacts when you're communicative. Does she lean in or pull back? Does she match your energy or disappear for days? Does she engage or shut down? Her reaction is your roadmap. If your communication causes her to retreat, then she's not emotionally mature enough to meet your energy. That's not your cue to shrink yourself. That's your cue to walk away. Because the longer you stay, the more you'll teach yourself that your words have no value. And eventually, you'll stop speaking altogether. Not just with her, but with the next woman who could have loved you. This is why masculine men protect their energy like gold. Not because they fear vulnerability, but because they understand its cost. Every text, every call, every effort, it's an investment. And the return needs to be more than breadcrumbs. So the next time a woman starts acting cold because you're being consistent, don't ask what's wrong with me. Ask why am I giving more to someone who's showing me less. Flip the script. Let her wonder. Let her feel your absence. Let her chase your silence. Because when you stop speaking to prove your worth and start speaking only to express it, that's when everything changes. That's when you reclaim your masculine edge. You know what's even more dangerous than her ignoring your words? It's her pretending to listen just enough to string you along. These are the women who reply just enough to keep you invested. They'll throw in a haha here. That's crazy. They're never fully engaging, but never fully disappearing. It's a calculated drip of attention designed to keep you chasing. And if you're not sharp, you'll interpret that breadcrumb trail as genuine connection. But brother, if your presence feels like a burden and your communication feels one-sided, then you're not in a relationship, you're in an illusion, a trap where her silence holds more power than your sincerity. And this is where many men break. You begin tying your self-worth to her response times. You send a message and the clock starts ticking. 10 minutes, 30, an hour, nothing. And with every passing minute, your confidence erodes. You overthink. You reread what you sent. You question whether you were too forward or not witty enough. And all the while, she's out living her life, completely unaware or unmoved. That's the psychological torture of modern dating, being emotionally available in a world that celebrates emotional distance. It turns strong men into anxious wrecks. It makes warriors feel like beggars. But here's the truth, and it's going to sting. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If she learns that your attention is free, she won't value it. If she sees that you'll keep chasing even when she stops engaging, she'll never try. If she realizes that your desire outweighs your dignity, she'll play with your heart like a toy. That's why your communication has to come with boundaries. You don't text just to fill silence. You don't call just to chase comfort. You speak when there's something worth saying, and if it's met with indifference, you pull back without apology. That's masculine discipline. That's emotional sovereignty. The women worth your time, the ones who actually want to connect, will never make you feel like communication is desperation. They'll respond with interest, not obligation. They'll ask questions. They'll match your energy. They won't punish your presence. They'll cherish it. But you'll never meet her if you keep entertaining women who confuse chaos for chemistry. You'll never build depth with a woman who runs from realness. And you'll never know what it feels like to be loved for who you are if you keep dimming your light for women who only thrive in shadows. So stop explaining yourself. Stop begging to be heard. Stop watering dead soil. In the end, your voice is a gift. Your presence is a privilege. Your words have weight, but only if you give them to someone who values them. So let her call it desperation. Let her think your sincerity is weakness. Let her mock your consistency. Because one day she'll look back and realize that the man she thought was too available was the rarest kind of man, the kind who showed up. And by then, you'll be long gone. Not because you gave up on love, but because you finally gave yourself permission to stop chasing women who punish communication. You rose, you detached, you spoke your truth, and you walked away with power intact. Now let's break this down even deeper. What kind of love is it if it can't handle words? What kind of connection requires you to mute your soul to keep her interested? That's not love. That's manipulation wrapped in romance. And far too many men are walking around thinking they're being romantic when they're really just being compliant. They think they're being patient when really they're being silenced. And they think they're being masculine by staying cool and calm when really they're just suppressing what's real. But brother, the masculine energy isn't quiet out of fear, it's quiet out of certainty. A man who speaks less doesn't do it to chase, he does it because he's already chosen. Here's the shift. When you stop fearing that your words are a turn-off, and you start filtering who receives your words, your whole energy changes. You no longer overthink before texting. You no longer double-check your punctuation like you're submitting an application. You speak when there's something to say, and you let the response reveal everything you need to know. No games, no chasing, no performance. That's when she feels the weight of your silence, not because you're punishing her, but because you've evolved beyond seeking her approval. You've become a man who only communicates with women who deserve it. And don't get it twisted, your calmness isn't the absence of expression, it's the mastery of expression. It's the power to say what needs to be said without attachment. It's the strength to speak and walk away if it's not received with presence. Because you've realized something most men never do, that your peace is more valuable than her validation, that your day doesn't revolve around a reply, that your worth isn't measured by her attention span, and that the man who guards his energy, who speaks less but with more weight, is the man she'll never forget, not because he chased, but because he chose not to. You'll start to notice something beautiful happen. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth through constant communication, your clarity sharpens. You start seeing who's real and who's not, who's genuinely interested and who's emotionally lazy, and most importantly, you start hearing yourself again. The inner voice that used to be drowned out by overthinking now roars with confidence. You stop asking, did I say too much? And start asking, did she show up with the same energy? Because that's what it's really about, reciprocity. If she doesn't mirror your effort, she doesn't deserve your presence, period. So here's the final truth, and it's brutal, but freeing. Most modern women aren't rejecting your communication. They're rejecting the feeling of being pursued without effort on their part. They want the prize without playing the game. But you're not a prize to be handed out. You're a standard to be met. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, stop overgiving, and stop mistaking availability for affection, you'll finally start attracting women who are ready to listen, ready to match, ready to grow. Until then, speak only when necessary, and let your calm, detached energy echo louder than any message ever could, because that, brother, is masculine power.